Hello there, this is Domina L. I'm about to play for you California Assembly testimony. It's really important to hold these public officials accountable. It's obvious they are not listening. Boy, what else is new? But they are funding projects to the tunes of millions of dollars, rubber stamping legislation that they should know is failed policy had they been listening to the testimony brought before them. But they're not listening because they don't really care. They are caring about the agendas of their peers in law enforcement. And I think it's really important to call this out. It's also important, and it would be awesome if you would subscribe to this channel and to also look through the videos and share the videos. This is how we control the narrative and support the cause for decriminalization. Thank you so much for watching. What we have here is a situation that pretty much repeats itself in every jurisdiction. This footage here is from the California State Assembly. This was a meeting about human trafficking, identifying the scope of the problem and potential solutions. And we have testimony from Maxine Dugan of ESPU and SPLRP and other organizations local to that region, including agencies that work with police to deal with what they consider to be human trafficking. Of course, we know that most of the time they're dealing with prostitution and calling it human trafficking. And some of the testimony here was extremely important. But as usual, it falls on deaf ears. So I wanted to revisit this because of the recent Oakland sex scandal. And I wanted to show that some of the same people, the same government officials, are sitting there after they have heard all that they have heard time and again about police officers having sex with sex workers, even minors. This was a very important subject that was brought up at this particular hearing about human trafficking, identifying the scope of the problem and potential solutions in 2015. And then I'll show you next the money guy from this particular assembly is, of course, still involved, still in government, and still passing money to these social services and to the police. And they're just not listening. They are not listening. They do not care. They don't care. So I wanted to point this out. So here we go.
The criminalization of prostitution is big money in our state. It allows law enforcement and state agencies as well as nonprofits to apply for and receive tax dollars under the guise of rescuing children. This is clearly failed policy. I have provided for you declarations from anonymous adult white female sex worker who had been entrapped by a naked FBI agent who posed as a customer in a prostitution sting operation under the guise of rescuing children, while in another instance she performed oral sex on a local California county sheriff. She was arrested in both cases for prostitution. Her story provides some insight to how these law enforcement agencies and the right-along nonprofits rescue people violated her constitutional rights. I'm also providing with you a redacted police report of a 29-year-old black female who too was arrested for prostitution under the guise of rescuing children. As you can see from that report I've provided for you, under the modus operandi, the police have listed crimes, sex, and children, but there were no children involved in her arrest. So our concern is that these police reports who are naming children in them when there are no children involved are being logged somehow as sex trafficking, and that in turn those police agencies and those nonprofits are using those inflated numbers to solicit monies to provide for their salaries, apparently.
Another complication of service provision is that here in California, nationwide, internationally, when we speak to young people who are involved in the sex industry, they report experiencing violence more often from law enforcement officials than from other individuals, be it clients in the sex industry, be it intimate partners, family members. And so they've reported that they've been physically and sexually assaulted by police officers. Sometimes this happens in exchange for not being arrested. Sometimes it happens in the course of an undercover sting operation. A case manager was sharing with me the experience of a young woman she was working with in Southern California who said, this guy picked me up in the car and we were driving for about 5 minutes and he let me fondle him the entire time. Then it ended up this was a police officer and I was arrested. And if I'm a minor and he's a police officer, isn't that not supposed to happen? And so just at that basic level, it's discouraging. And then if we think about the implications for service provision, if young people see that service providers are working closely with law enforcement, they become a little suspicious and a little weary of it and are slower to open up and to trust them because of either this personal lived experience of negative interactions or the larger sort of conversation within their communities of hearing, this is what's happened to my friends.
So this is another video that I'm filming, but yeah, who is listening? No one. But let's go on.
If you're going to look at the priorities that we need to consider for next year's legislative cycle, the first is resources. So I just want to congratulate the legislator last year in passing $10 million, not just for children, but for all trafficking victims and to be used for specialized services. In addition, we have the $10 million for DCFS to provide specialized CSEX services within child welfare. This is a huge package that no other state has, but we have to make sure we continue that as a resource. And we did not get the $10 million as a continuing budget request, so that's going to be our request this year.
If you need money, I haven't shared budgets on 5, so don't worry about the money.
Okay, so you just saw some excerpts from that whole video is actually on this channel, and I'll link to it down below. But you've just seen the testimony from Maxine Dugan and Alex Lutnick talking about abuses that are occurring not just in the California region, but, all over the place, where youth are reporting that they are facing violence from police officers more than anyone else, and problems regarding the way these busts are being recorded, that there is a real issue around, if children are not involved, why are reports being filed as if they are? And also the fact that officers and FBI agents are having sexual contact with sex workers during these sting operations, where it results in their arrest for prostitution. And of course, you saw testimony which occurred that same day from one of the NGOs, local NGOs there, asking for $10 million. And then Reggie, the money man, coming back and assuring them that, there's, just let me know how much money you need. And now we're going to go fast forward to just very recently. All right, here we go. So, look who we have here again. This is, good grief, almost a full year later. Mr. Money Guy. This is a bill sponsored by Senator Hancock, SB 1110, for a law enforcement-led diversion program. So this man here has heard testimony number of times and from a number of people, from sex workers as well as non-sex workers, people who are very concerned about police officers laying their hands on minors and adults and having sex with them. And let's see.
No, I have more a comment than I do a question. I really appreciate this
the ex-police officer
perspective that's being brought forth by the author here. Just as a reminder, in contrast to some of the remarks that have been made, law enforcement has a great deal to benefit by such programs that have proven to be successful.
No, they haven't.
In Seattle, where 58% were proven to be less likely to be arrested after pursuing this program. We know that Santa Fe, New Mexico, Albany, New York, and others are considering this program as well because of the success. And, law enforcement risks their life every day to provide safety and security for...
Yeah. Like the ones down in Oakland. Or Anthony Rollins up in Alaska. Or Sergio Alvarez in Sacramento, who raped over 35 prostitutes. Anthony Rollins, his tally was something like 30 plus. And of course, we'll probably never know exactly how many. And, you have these police officers all over the United States. This is not an anomaly. This is happening a lot. And people are too afraid to step forward, or when they do step forward, they are, like we've seen the case where the judge, wouldn't, in one case, prosecutor wouldn't bring up charges because she was concerned that the jury wouldn't believe that a prostitute could be raped. And then in another situation, a similar thing happened with a judge. And, there's a big problem here, huge problem. And I don't, risking your lives, busting prostitutes. Really? Really, sir? Okay.
This culture, and we have been characterized sometimes as people who are not committed to that very mission, and it's
Sir, that is a well-earned reputation. Well-earned.
I just take exception to that, being one who was part of that culture, and still very, very thankful for that opportunity I had to serve the community in that capacity. And I believe that they want to be good partners in providing leadership on this very, very difficult problem. These problems, there are more than one. They've just identified the prostitution piece, but there's drug offenses and other social anomalies that are causing heartache.
Social anomalies. Okay.
And they're causing the breaking of families and causing some very, very serious problems. And we believe that...
So, sir, when people are addicted to drugs, and let's say we're talking about survival sex work, well, that is a person who is in dire straits in terms of, keeping themselves in their home or a shelter above their head or food on their table, and with no social safety net in the United States, because this is United States. There's no universal health care. There's, there is no social safety net for people. To arrest them is to burden them further. Is to make their lives, well, basically impossible, sir. So don't give us your little bleeding heart, you care speech. It's pathetic.
Experience as a profession can prove to be very, very building and not demoralizing. So I thank you for what you're bringing forward, and I'm full support.
Thank you very much.
Ms. Hancock, Senator Hancock, you may close.
Well, I would like to address some of the concerns that were raised. LEAD is not about general policy relating to whether or not prostitution should be decriminalized. LEAD, as it...
Did she think that we were under the impression it was?
In Seattle, is applied to people who are living in peril. Not because...
Maybe she had a conversation with the SWAP people.
They engage in sex work per se, although that can be a perilous occupation.
Especially with cops molesting, coercing sex, raping, and arresting people. Oh, yeah.
Because of many conditions, drugs, alcohol, other things that end them up on the street. I think there are other kinds of convictions like shoplifting that might also be appropriate for LEAD, and we can look at that in the future. But often, my understanding is that prostitution takes place through the internet. This is a street level law enforcement pre-booking, so you don't have a record, diversion program that is entirely voluntary. No one needs to be in it, and it won't be offered to everyone.
What happens to the people who don't get into LEAD? Are they the ones that go to jail? And this is up to the discretion of police officers. We know how good their judgment can be.
It's actually law enforcement-led assisted diversion. There's training, and in talking to the officers that have done it, it engages them with their community and with social services.
It also gives them a paycheck.
Entirely different way, and they make those calls for when someone is ready. I had one officer say, I've been with people begging me. I know I've got a problem. I know I'm an addict. I know whatever. If only I could go somewhere other than back to jail and out of jail.
Maybe they should just stop arresting these people for being addicts or working in prostitution trying to survive. Maybe that should be on the table.
And those are the people that this program will allow law enforcement and social services working together. The program
We've seen how that goes.
requires a very extensive kind of community involvement. In Seattle, it was everyone from the prosecutor's office to the ACLU working.
Of course, the government officials sing its praises, but I just saw an article a few days ago that was specifically based in Seattle that talked about how much prostitution, street prostitution, was going on in Seattle. That it was a big, well, they call it a problem, but that it was a big issue. So this program certainly is not, yeah.
Together, and the public defenders. I hope that the program will move forward, and there is a short 11-minute film that I would be happy to share with the opposition if you haven't seen it. Chairman Joan Sawyer and I have seen it. I've seen it several times. That I learn something every time.
I can believe that. I can believe that an 11-minute film, she learns something new every time she watches it.
About why this moves us toward the restorative justice approach we just heard about from Assemblymember Weber and her bill. So I would ask for your aye vote and look forward to working with everyone involved in this issue as the bill moves forward.
Now, earlier in this testimony, opposition to it, spoke about the Oakland case. They brought that up at this hearing. Police officers having sex with prostitutes. Keep that in mind.
And I want to thank you, and I want to thank the opposition for bringing in your concerns. Yeah. So I will tell you, Senator Hancock heard you, and she'll make sure that the things that you mentioned won't happen in California, won't be a part of her program.
You mean down in Oakland, sir? You're talking about Oakland. You're talking about the police officers having sex with prostitutes down in Oakland. All those officers, over 30 officers having sex with, she was underage for part of it, barely legal now. You were also made aware over a year ago, sir, of you had a social worker, a researcher come into your assembly and sit and tell you, it was the testimony at the beginning of this video that where Alex Lutnick says that minors in the sex trade report violence committed against them from police officers more than anyone else, more than partners, more than family, more than clients, more than anyone. It's police officers, sir. And here you are promoting and supporting a police officer-led program to come directly in contact with these people. Give them more money, sir.
Pleasure of going to Washington, D.C., see and talk to the people who run the LEAD program. And the individuals, especially law enforcement individuals, actually remind me a lot of my colleagues from Palmdale. They're officers with a big heart, and they want to make a difference. And in fact, one officer talked about someone on drugs, worked with them about 7 times because they were on and off. Normally, that individual would have been going to jail after the 2nd or 3rd offense, but he worked with that individual to ensure that they would make it. And it was kind of an out-of-body experience for a law enforcement officer to allow it to go on and on, but he could see some progress. And so I will say, and I'll remind Senator Hancock, I think we met some extraordinary people. And so we need to make sure the right people are involved in it so we don't have the kind of incidents that were mentioned today. And so I'm recommending an aye vote.
Of course you are, sir. And how are you going to make sure? You know, that is just a bunch of baloney. Like, they're going to really make sure that the right people, okay, all right, let's hear your plan for that, sir. Or is that just something to, you know, like a big, huge pacifier? Oh yeah, we're going to make sure that, you know, people are involved who aren't going to be putting their dicks in the people in the program. We're going to make sure. Well, how are you going to make sure, sir? Let's see your plan. There is no plan. This is just always a shut up and go away. We're going to do whatever we want plan. And we're gonna pour millions of dollars into this, and it'll be job security for all sorts of people working in social services and law enforcement at the expense of the people who we claim we're here to help. Boy, is that just sweet of them.
Thank you.
SB 1110, the motion is due pass to the Appropriations Committee. Jones Sawyer. Aye. Jones Sawyer, aye. Melendez. Lackey. Lackey, aye. Lopez. Lowe. Quirk. Quirk, aye. Santiago.
The measures on call need one more.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
More like a poke in the eye. They don't care. They do not care about prostitutes. They don't care about people working in sex work. Oh, no, no, no. They don't care. Here, let me show you this 11-minute film. It'll change your life.
Now I can say good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Well, so you see that? You see how these people, these government officials, are ignoring? Nothing new there. If this was something positive for our community, you really think these people would be supporting it? You really think the police would be behind it? And yeah, this is a diversion, all right. It's a diversion from the real solution, which is decriminalization. Decriminalization now. Now. We deserve nothing
I had
less.
somebody very close to me tortured, and she eventually died in front of my eyes.
An indescribable life of pain and exploitation. Jessa Dillo Crisp says family members sexually abused her as a child and forced her to pose for pornographers. She was sold to countless men on a daily basis. Jessa couldn't go to police because they were among her abusers.
There's gang raping. There's police officers who put handcuffs on me and rape me and tell me that I would be put in jail if I opened my voice.
You know what I'd like to ask, Ms. Crisp? Why are you supporting legislation that puts the police, the same police that you were just accusing, right on top of that vulnerable population that you say you are working to protect?